Recording. Good. Right, so I'll just start again in case you want to see this. By the way, did anybody look in at last week? As a matter of interest, just nod if you did. Oh, you did, lots of nods. Good. So I can see you a little bit. I can see half of you. There you go. I realised that wasn't that helpful, but maybe the droning of my voice was in some small benefit. There we go. So I was just talking about competition, and what we really want to do is just to assess before we start where we're going to put our horizon. Now, with this clump of information here, this detail to one side, this gives us, it's compositionally very odd, but it's actually quite successful in the composition because it means that we're looking into this space here. So here's our subject matter. It's this mud and this view. This is almost like foreground, like almost like just like a decoration, like like when you have a bush or a flower or something in the foreground. So that's how we're sort of managing this composition, these compositional elements. Now, on my piece of paper, correctly, you're very close up today. Is that all right? Yeah, that's fine. This is I'm using a half sheet today. I can see I've only half stuck the piece of paper to the board. Let me just go and find my masking tape and stick that edge down. The only reason I tape down is to hold the thing flat. Last week I used a smaller sheet and painted up to the edge, and that is quite a nice effect where you leave a crisp white edge, but I don't very often paint like that. I prefer to give myself the space within the format to choose rather to paint within. So I'm going to paint within this area, and I don't know yet what size this is going to end up, if that makes any sense. All right. Okay. And I've lost my pencil, which is a good start. Where's that gone? Oops. That's the camera. Well, that is just ridiculous. I've lost my pencil. Would you believe it? I mean, I have other pencils. Okay, so not my favorite pencil, just a pencil. 5B, that should get us through, shouldn't it? So what's interesting here, we've got a horizon. I'm just going to put this in very roughly. Because we've got a distant horizon, I will always suggest having a very, very straight, even ruler drawn straight line. So we can, if I put that in with my small ruler here, 1/3 of the way down, that will just give me a good starting point. And the reason I have a vertical horizon, sorry, that's horizontal, is because because we're in the game of illusions here. And when you see a very, very straight line in the distance, your brain knows you must be looking across the sea, or a desert would be the alternative. Because such as it is, you'll notice that this is also flat here, this beach, but it's lumpy and wavy because it's in the foreground. So perspective means that that changes to be more of a sort of wavy line. Even though, of course, this is lumpy and bumpy, but it's so far away we can't see that, if that makes any sense at all. So that's all I'm going to put that sketch in there. Now, all of this information here, I don't think there's much point in drawing any of this. What I can do probably is just indicate to myself. So if I look at this piece of paper here, let's bring this closer to you. And our painting from photographs isn't always the best thing. If you're out there sketching in the wilds, you're going to not have this opportunity. But there's this feature here, which you can, I mean, the point is when you're doing your own painting, you can choose to put things in or not. You know, you don't have to put things in. And there is a sort of these channels marching across the page in front of us, which we can put in or leave out if we want to. There's a channel here coming towards us. But here's the challenge, really, boats. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about boats. You see, I've prepared a few sketches here. There's a problem with boats. They curve, they've usually got a curve in the deck and on the base. They're pointy at one end and flat at the other. And they have a sort of ovaloid kind of shape like this. So what this means is when they're in perspective, they are almost impossible to draw. So what I tend to do is to forget all of that drawing nonsense, because I think I've explained before, I don't believe that, you know, drawing is, if you like, is a sort of a, I mean, you know, I think drawing is, I mean, there are some people that can draw beautifully, and, you know, I've got an artist I admire hugely, who can literally make a thing of beauty with just a pencil, but I'm not one of those. I've rather learned how to get away with not drawing. I mean, hence, you know, sort of tricks, if you like putting a horizon in with a ruler, because if I just draw naturally, it always comes out a bit wonky, and you always know if you're a good drawer or not. If you want to know if you can draw, go to life drawing classes, and I've got mountains of really, really bad figure drawings. You know, I really have, because I just don't have that completely natural eye. If you look at somebody, an artist like Sheila, what's his first name? I can't remember. Igor? No, that's Stravinsky. Anyway, he has this way of almost, is it Egon? I was nearly there, thank you. Egon Schiele, a wonderful way of almost drawing in one line, and the curves, the lines are so sensuous. It is so just how, it just feels like a human being, you know, when you're looking at this drawing. And that is somebody that can draw. And by the way, the artist that I much admire is a street kid from Portsmouth, who I met through a friend, called Joe Loughborough. And he is now currently exhibiting in Berlin, Paris, and Los Angeles. But I've got 2 of his paintings on my wall, which I bought when he was a struggling young punk. And he has, I just saw some of his drawings and I just absolutely gasped. And it has got that Sheila-like quality to it. Anyway, that's not me. I digress. That's not me. So here's what I propose we do to avoid having to draw. Now, I want you to, rather than think of a boat, think of a shape. If you look at this object here, what we've really got is a kind of an oval, okay? That's really what's actually there. And then on top of that is another oval. And if you can keep it as simple as that, then we'll get enough information down on the page in the right place that we'll be able to paint over this. So here's what I propose. I'll do this roughly first, and just try and carefully plot where you're going to put these images. So it looks like this is about halfway down the page. Okay, so I'm going to put my first oval in around here. I'm going to put my second oval in. This isn't really an oval. This one here is a kind of like a sausage shape, isn't it? It's this kind of shape. So I'm going to put that in there very, very roughly, just connecting up to the edge of this boat here. So sausage here. And then in the foreground here, directly underneath that, if you look here, can you see what I'm doing? Yes. If you look here and just project your lines down, you'll see that this back part of this boat is almost the same length as the whole of this boat. And then there's another bit. And so this shape here is more of a, does that make sense? It's a sort of a, kind of a, it's like a big smile, you know, that could be a comedy smile, couldn't it? You know, like that. So we'll put that just there, about halfway along there. Just pop that in there, draw that down there, and draw that like that. Whoops, I've put that line in the wrong place. And draw that like that. That will do. Will that do? No, that's not big enough. So that's a bit too short because of the relative size of this one. Actually needs to be about half the size. So I'm just going to change this drawing while I can. I'm now going to have an ugly black line in the middle of that shape. And then we've got this boat finally, which is behind this boat. And that's a, again, that's a sort of an oval, really. So I'm just going to draw in an oval here, like this, and it comes out the front there like that. So that amount of information, I think, will give us is enough to start to construct these boats. Now, the only thing I'm going to do to add to that is, so run with me on this and try not to draw boats, whatever you do, because can I just show you what will happen? If you try and draw a boat, even at this oblique angle, you'll know in your mind that a boat is this shape, okay? In your mind, you know about such. So when you try and draw this boat here, what you're going to draw is you're going to draw this. And the perspective is going to be as though you were looking down from, and you will, and I promise you will, because I know that I'm the same. So I know this, okay? So trust me on this oval thing. Trust me on this, just draw the rough ovals. Now, I'm going to now just add to a couple of these shapes. So in this one in the distance, this is really flat circle. I'm going to draw this shape for you. It's just that. That's what that shape is. So I'm going to draw that shape in at the top there. And it's got this slightly different colored back or transom, which is just like that. That's all I'm going to do there. Can you see that? This one here, this oval, has got a shape that looks a bit like, so I draw this, it comes down and goes up, then that joins onto the top of the shape, and it's that shape. So it's a sort of a squashed oval. And so I'm just going to pop that in there. Mainly, I just want to put that transom on there. That's all I'm worried about on that one. And then with this, I will now correct my ovaloid, because I can see a very distinctive boat-like shape just here, with a curve coming down and a little, like a bracket, like a closed bracket. I'm just going to pop that in there like that. That's all I'm going to do. Oh, and maybe that. For this one here, again, we've got this flattened circle there, like that. That's all we need to do there. And on this one, because I put that line in the wrong place, that's confusing. Really, the only feature I need to draw here is this rear transom, like that. And there's a lot of shadow here, which is actually concealing the fact that this has a keel, a little tiny keel like this, which then runs underneath the boat. So those are our boat shapes. Now, I sort of deconstructed that for you a little bit. But if you did, if you kind of followed that, then your shape should look like this. And strangely, they look a bit like boats now, which is a curiosity, and they don't look like this at all. So that's a bit of a challenge for today. That one, that drawing is, like I said, it's not a comfortable thing for most people. There are a handful of gods out there that can draw, and they really are a handful. Most of us have to work out strategies for not having to draw. Anyway, having said that, what we're here for is water and color together at the same time. So just want to check we get a line of sight. This is going to help our illusion coming through the boats. And so I'm a bit high here, can you see? So I'm just going to change that line of sight to halfway along the boats, and then make sure that comes out at the right height here, so that I'm referenced properly here. Now, what's interesting, I'm just going to make pan. I'm just going to lift you up a little bit in the air. So apologies for this. You can't see my whole page. So I thought to myself when I started this drawing, so is anybody else on the same page as me? That I was going to do a small drawing in the middle of the frame, and look what's happened. I've now got a whole frame. That's the way it is. That's the way the cookie crumbles. I deliberately haven't governed any other part, but I can't leave anything less than that between the last element and the edge of the page. So I can't cut this off. It would just look ridiculous. Now, one of the things I said, the thing I loved about this was these shadows. So I'm going to draw these in, which is perhaps a bit unusual. But again, don't worry too much about this. This is just an oval, all right? And I'm going to look very carefully at where these start and where they end. And this is level with the bottom of the boat. And then that's a very, very narrow shadow indeed, that one. And then this one here, again, bottom of the boat, coming round. And you can't see that one at all. So that's adequate information there. That's all we need to worry about. I don't think there's any more information we need to sketch in. Noisy motorcycle. That man's compensating for something. Right. There is here a line of trees, but I'm not going to bother drawing that in because it's sort of grey and in the distance. I think that's just a brush stroke, really. I think if we drew that in, that would detract from, if you like, the focus of the image, which is this lot. We've also got a paler area here. I wasn't going to draw that in, but I just have, of these grasses which are lit by sun. Let's not worry too much about that either. Okay, so let's get down to some splashing some water about. As always, we're going to start with a very light and overall soft wash. And so I'm going to soak this paper to within an inch of its life. And it really will, this is really good quality paper, but it will still suck up a huge amount of water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come across the whole of anything that looks blue to you. So that's the whole of this water area here, all the way down to the boats, but be very careful to not go into the boats at this stage. And remember, I'm top loading the paper here with water because the water is going to run down. You can see the bead already forming here, which I don't really want. But it's just a part of life with watercolors, and it's absolutely fine because in fact it can add some very interesting effects if you manage that bead well. Now, one thing I can do here, so I'm going to just come down and just clip the edge of these boats. I'm going to try not to wet in wet within the boat area, and I'm definitely going to stop before, if you like, the orange color of the beach starts. That's most important for this, that we don't invade that orange area, because we want a nice solid edge there between the blue bits and the pink bits, for want of a better word. That sounds rude. All right. Time for some blue. I haven't got any clean areas in my palette. Well, I think for this, I will just clean out that purple area there so I can have a nice clear blue. There we go. Nice and clean. Doesn't take long. And because this is a large area, and I have got two mops, but this is my smaller of the two. And I think probably I wish I had my large mop with me for this kind of area, but we'll be fine. Obviously, the thing about the mop is it holds a huge amount of pigment, and what we want right now is a lot of pigment. So I'm just going to mix up that blue. That's so I've got a lot of water in there. That might be a bit too much. No, it's not. No, it can't be too much. What are you talking about? Squish some new lovely ultramarine paint into my palette area there, and that is perfect. I don't think I need to challenge that at all. So make sure it's thoroughly mixed, because one of the things you can do is to, if you don't mix it properly, you can have a dollop of extra strong pigment on one side of the brush, and as soon as you do this, you're going to get a blue streak on one side of your brush, and it's pretty close to impossible to remove. Now, so that's my big blue brush all ready to go. That's difficult to say. Big blue brush all ready to go. But we've got a bit of a sort of pink staining in the sky there, so one just on the horizon. And I'm going to start by just laying in an orange undertone there, just on the horizon. And what this is going to do, let me just show you my source material. I want to have this pink glow that you probably can only just about make out on the horizon. And I want that to also be there to affect the tones that are in these marshes. So fingers crossed this isn't too strong. No, it's not too strong, that's fine. Amazingly, I have to report, ladies and gentlemen, that paper is dried out already. And I thought I'd really soaked it hugely, but I haven't soaked it enough, obviously. So, I mean, it's just as well I was able to divine that in advance. Otherwise, I'd have got nasty, streaky stuff. But you can see how that lovely pink has hit the horizon. That's quite nice. Actually, let's just go here and run some of that pink into that area of marshland. And there's an area down here as well, which has got some pink showing. I'm not going to do the beach, although it's got pretty much the same set of tones in. I'm going to come back to the beach for a different thing. So that's all I need, isn't it, really? I'm just going to lay some of that in there, a little tiny bit. Okay, right, blue time. Let's hope that is wet enough. I can see that it's drying out. I think it's a particularly dry day today. Let's just try that again. Oops, that's soaked, and that's run down the page and taken up part of my. I've just put a great big blobs of blue paint right into one of my boats. I sincerely hope that is the part which is going to be blue. I think it probably is. Okay. Whoa. Yeah, the paper's reacting very strangely today. It must be the atmosphere. It's hard. I would describe the paper as hard, and it's just not the paint's not flowing. That's all. Never mind. That's fine. I'm not going all the way to the edge. I'm being artistic, but I want to just now softly bring that down to meet the pink and not go any further. And now I'm going to continue this blue into the low area. I'm not going to try and reach the depth of tone that we see. That's quite a lot darker than this. I'm going to try and replicate this blueness here. Just to, oops, lots of beads running everywhere. What I'm trying to do. All I want to do here is to, we'll come back and we'll do an overlay here. So just want to get that blue color that's up there into this area here, and I'm just very careful not to run into my boats. So I'm using the edge of the brush here quite delicately to avoid that. That'll do. I don't mind if sometimes if the brush misses like this, you get a few nice marks. Now I've knocked out all of my pink, which is quite annoying because I wanted that to look all summery and sunsetty. So at the risk of ruining the entire thing, I'm just going to try and put that back. This is pink, just a very faint wash of pink. I'm going to try and put that back in. I hope that works. It might not. I might have ruined my painting just now. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to quickly dry that off. You've still got these huge beads here. We don't want those. They're not going to help at all. They're going to, all they're going to do is bloom back into the frame just when you least wanted it. So I'm just going to suck those out. And here. And then dry off. So talk amongst yourselves while I make a lot of noise. Excellent. So a couple of things. So amazingly, I'm very pleased to say I've got that lovely pink glow back, and that's exactly what I wanted. I want this feeling of that sunsetty kind of in the distance feeling. The sky is fairly pale; it's not at all heavy, and it's got the right vibes. So I'm very pleased with that. Now, as with all that water, obviously the paper goes into a right old buckle, and you get a few. You've got some sort of undulations in the paint as a result of it having lain in the troughs, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's okay. It actually looks quite attractive. As I finish drying, though, that paper has now gone absolutely flat again, and this is how you know if your paper's dry or not. If it's not absolutely flat, it isn't dry. And if you try and paint on top of even slightly damp paint, it's going to look pretty ugly, so you don't want to do that. So do keep drying even when you think it's fully dry. That's one of those curious things. So what should we do next? Well, amongst other things, we've got to reduce the tone, or if you like, yeah, the the grayscale, as it were, of this C area, and at the same time leave some elements of this reflective blue showing. You can see that there are tiny bits here which are actually the same as the sky, but it's overall in a lower tone. So what I'm going to try and do here is to overcoat. I'm going to try and do this as delicately and as quickly as possible. And so I'm going to use an enormous brush because I want to really just drag the brush over it very, very quickly. Incidentally, we're breaking this down into compartments. I'm just saying because I could just as easily at this point have started on the beach and done a nice big pink. I say pink, I mean, I know it looks brown, but actually it's sort of a pinkish orange painting over here. Or we could have started on the detail in the boats. It doesn't really matter. I think you will start to, I think one starts to find one's own sort of pathways into painting. Whichever way you feel is right is okay. It's okay, trust me on this. So this big area of sea here, it's not sea, it's mud. It's reflective mud. Claire knows exactly what this is. It's that stinky stuff that we walk past on a regular basis.
My swimming place.
Oh yeah, but not when it's muddy, surely. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pick up on some blues, and I'm going to add some reds. Now, because of the way, so I've got this pigment made up from before, so I've got some crimson here, which I'll add to that, which will just, but that's a little bit too much crimson. That's a little bit purple, or is it? Let's have a look. Yeah, I need much more blue than that. A bit more blue. There we go. So I didn't want to make an absolutely purple, but I just felt that the crimson was the right. Just have a look at this on a practice piece of paper. Where's my practice piece? Let's just see what we've got. What do you reckon? I'll probably do, won't it? It might be a bit dark, actually. It's surprisingly subtle. We don't need to put much pigment in at all to change that quite dramatically. Now, the other thing is I want to keep this brush dry-ish because I don't want to put marks everywhere. And watch carefully before you steam into this. I'm going to try to avoid, can you see this? Yes, you can. I'm going to try to avoid this yellow area here, which runs all the way to here. And it's very, very narrow. It's a very tiny, thin strip close to the horizon. I'm going to try and leave some areas of this blue showing through. And I'm going to probably, I'm just talking to myself now because I realize that I want to put some of this green in here as well. In the foreground, there's some of this green marks going on. So I might just, ever so quickly, this is just to show you. This is I'm just going to drag this across the surface, almost not touching, so that we get this odd broken mark. And I will carefully find ways of articulating that as we go through. Need another one here, so it gets a bit darker, so we get this undulating quality to it. And comes all the way down to the bottom, and just to pick up on that channel that's running there. Don't want any brush marks showing if I can help it. Now, while this is dampish, I'm going to come in there with some greenish tint. And luckily, I've got some made up here from earlier. Got a bit of turquoise and a bit of yellow, and I'm just going to plop that in around here. And just like the other one, just skim that across the surface. I'm not going to try and draw anything. I just want to tint some of these banks, make them look a bit greener. And that's really nicely cutting into the purple I've just put down and pushing it out the way. So that's going to give me a sort of a high quality of a highlight there. It's quite nice, unexpected bonus. And there's some greenish tinge there. And there's a greenish tinge too in that sort of exposed bank up there. Now, I haven't quite succeeded. I've missed some of the horizon there. We're a bit low. So what I'm going to do here is just go back with a smaller brush, because this is quite successful. This is what I wanted. So with a slightly smaller brush now, I'm just going to get a thin wash of that same pigment, the purple color I had before, and just run the brush across, just meeting the horizon. That's all I want to do. I'm not dealing with this, the trees and stuff at this stage. And we just want to start there, really. That'll do. So quickly, ever so quickly if you can. Just run up to there. That'll do fine. This completes our illusion and separates the foreground from the from the sky. That'll do. There's a bit of a shadow on that bank just here. I'm just going to put some of that in. Just to, just while the pigment's wet. Give me a soft, and that's not finished. We'll come back and finish that off. And there's a bit there. And there's a bit there.
Nick, is that the same colour that you did the bottom bit by? What did you use for that?
Yeah, sorry, I've mixed up. Can you see that purple colour there? This is the sky colour plus some crimson, and I use that to cover the whole of this.
Right, and the darker area at the bottom, what was that one?
That's the same pigment.
Oh.
It's literally just the same pigment. It's just that what that is that's put down a little bit more solidly rather than dragging it across the
more
surface.
than a wash.
If that makes any sense. I'm sorry, I hope that's clear. Anyway, I was fiddling then. I shouldn't have been fiddling, so that's naughty of me. I moved off piece there a little bit. With these sorts of textures like this, one tends to sort of try and improvise to create the illusion of that surface without it necessarily being very structured or disciplined in any way. So hopefully when we get the beach in, then this is going to be just background, and the eye's just going to see the colors and shapes that we want it to see, and not worry too much about the actual brush strokes or anything like that. So all I'm trying to do here, is trying to emulate the sort of pigments and tones that we've got in a sort of textured way, if that makes sense. So rather leaving that to nature. Okay, so so far so good. Now let's just go here with a much smaller brush, and the reason I'm doing this now is because it's not dissimilar to the pigment we've just been using. So there's the pigment we've just been using, which of course was a sort of is deliberately additive to the blue we already had there. But this is going to have to go back towards the blue a little bit. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of additional blue, just to make that more of an indigo. And now, one thing I would say about trees on the horizon is we must be very careful not to draw them very accurately. What we need to do is to provide our viewer with enough information that they will fill in, their brain will fill in the blanks for them. So I'm just going to make a mark which runs all the way across. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and keep that horizon as absolutely horizontal as it is already. And I'm just going to check that we've got the right tone here. Now this is very small, okay, so it's only at its closest point. This is only on this huge piece, half a centimetre or so of information. So I'm going to start here on this horizon, and oh no, I've gone down below the horizon. It's exactly what I didn't want to do. I'm just going to drag the brush all the way along in one go, getting slightly bigger towards one end. And now I'm going to try and break up that top edge, make that look a bit more like trees. And one of the things you can use here is just water. If you use just water, it will soften the tops and break up your pigment and make it look just like trees. Now, annoyingly, I've dropped down below the horizon, and that has such a dramatic effect on the illusion. It's almost a fail. Because if you drop down below the horizon, suddenly that piece of land is marching towards you. That's much closer than it was. So I actually got rid of that bit where it dropped down below the horizon because I am suitably upset by it. Okay, so I'm just got some random grey material from around the palette, and I'm just going to, because this is all wet here, just put a few blobs in here and there, nothing structured. This is literally putting a few bits of pigment in. That's got dry there, so that doesn't look so good. So where it's dry, I'm going to need to come along and just moisten that up in a second, which is what I'll do now. There we are. And now we've got this kind of variegated line. It's exactly what we wanted. It's sort of, it's what the effect that trees make. It's sort of in and out of focus, in and out of strength. That's too hard at this end because it's disappearing into the horizon. I really wanted that much softer. So that's a good tree line. I'm good with that one. Over here, on this hand, on this side, it's much fainter. It really is incredibly faint. And it's also very, very blue. So if you look very, very closely at your distant trees over here, that's tiny and it's very, very blue. So I would suggest cleaning a little hole in your palette and just making up some nice, neat, pure blue. And I've got here, I'm adding a tiny bit of Prussian just to make it a slightly different looking blue to what we had before. And this is such a fine mark. Now, literally just on the horizon, running down like that. And what this paleness is telling you, the audience, is that it's a very, very, it's a hazy sunsetty kind of day. And so we don't want to make that very dark at all. So again, I can look at this now and I can make judgment calls like, I need to soften the top there, make it go out of focus. And also it might be a little bit on the heavy side. So I can just very, very delicately, and very carefully, just dab bits out just to lighten it a shade. But be careful when you do that, you don't scrub. That's grand. And that actually goes, they should meet because this is Hayling Island coming in front, and then behind that is Emsworth or Thorney in the distance. That's supposed to go all the way along. So that's naughty of me. Let's just try and continue that along. That pigment's too strong, but that's okay. I'm going to dab some of that out in a second. do fine. So that bit's done. So the C I'm comfortable with for the time being. We're going to come back at the end and touch up with a very skinny brush. But now we're going to tackle, I think we should tackle boats now. So just wave if you're, I'm just going to put you all on, let's look at you all. Just wave if you're ready for me to continue, thumbs up or something. Or if you want me to, or give me a sign like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 finger, 2 fingers, don't give me 2 fingers.
Nick,
And, yes, dear.
I quite like, I don't know about the others, some sort of time to catch up, because you do a bit and we watch you, and then we're trying to do it and you've moved on to the next bit.
I'm sorry, absolutely.
I don't know about the others, but I sort of like every so often, like just a minute or two for you to perhaps the catch up time. I don't know, does anybody agree, or don't do it just...
Good for me. Do you want a minute now?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah, I think I missed a couple. I missed the dark bit leading down to the boat because I was trying to do the wash, and then I thought, oh no, I've missed a couple, and then I've missed the yellow bit as well.
Well, luckily now that we're all sophisticated and technical, you'll be able to view this again because I'll be loading this onto YouTube. So, which is great too. So if you on this occasion, if you like almost doodle with this and try some of the strokes out, and then next time when you've got the YouTube video, when you have a crack at this, you can actually pause it when you need to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. So give it a couple of minutes just to catch up. Then I'll just hang on. I'll just pause the video, start the recording again. There we go, and I make myself in the middle by doing something. No, remove pin. Hang on. Speaker. That'll be me. There we go. I'm now large in the frame. I hope my camera, my computer is picking this up. Okay, so this is a fun bit. Again, large brush. So what we're going to do here is a very pink sky, for want of a better word. And it doesn't need to be particularly dark in color. So I'm mixing up some red and some yellow. This is quite a lot leaning towards the red at the moment. Some more yellow. And I've got an orangey color. And that's probably adequate. It's slightly grubby because there was some pigment in the thing already, but you know, that's fine. And just want to paint this over everything. And like with, I've just painted it all over the back of the side of the boat, which I didn't really want to do. So what I want to achieve here is, I want this to be a painting, so I'm going to leave a lot of the brush strokes in. And I'm running out of pigment, which I always do, and I never mix up enough pigment. And if I do fail there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have to make up a little bit more, which I didn't really want to do. I don't like doing that, but I'm going to have to on this occasion. So should have made more pigment. There you go. That'll go on my gravestone. So make a little bit more of that just to fill in those little gaps there and there. And a bit under there, a bit in there, a bit up there. And there was a bit of pink there, wasn't there? Where else was there some pink? But like a sky, you don't want to touch that twice. You don't want to start scraping and scrubbing because it will stop looking like a watercolor and start to get a bit congested. So just try and just get the pigment down in one go if you can. And just finishing off those edges. And don't forget, at this stage, we can get away without being very accurate. What happens in the process is that we start off with these loose under washes, and then as you resolve the marks and get stronger and darker and more precise, the whole thing kind of resolves out. It's a bit like, I imagine, how a musician must feel when he does his first, just the drums, and you just listen to the drums and you go, that doesn't sound, very interesting. But by the time you've got all the 4 instruments in there and the little flute part on top, it all sounds gorgeous. There we go, a bit like that really. I am going to dry that off because it was a big area, it's quite wet. Okay, now for a little bit of fun. I've got a quite a thick flat brush, and I'm going to make up some fairly dark pigments. And just for the sake of continuity, I'll probably make it similar sort of bunch of tones. We've got this ultramarine, crimson. I'll probably aim for the same sorts of tones. But I want it quite thick because, well, we don't want this to be too thin. This is intended to make a texture, you see. So I don't want it to be too wishy-washy. So that's what I'm working with there. Can you see that? It's quite a lot of pigment still. And now, problem is, the beach has got stones on, but the boats don't. So you've got to, and neither has the water. So you're going to have to do this in a very controlled way. And the other thing is that what you get with perspective is you get smaller marks in the distance and larger marks in the foreground, which is very difficult. It's nature to be so demanding. So as you get into the foreground, you can start to put much bigger kind of splashier marks on like this, and then much finer towards the distance. And now the other thing I find with this splashing thing, which is a technique which you can trot out from time to time, quite challenging to use, but it can be very effective. What was I going to say? So one of the problems is, yeah, you don't want to get too much of a single direction. So I tend to keep changing the direction of the brush so that the splats go in different directions. You'll see that it will have a natural kind of dynamic quality to it. Be careful you don't get any dots on your back of your boats, because boats don't have stones on. And of course, that's what we're doing, is we're giving cues to the viewer, try and give them a clue as to what it is they're looking at. Just spots on the beach if possible. Now, one of the other things I have done in the past, which I'm very successful, is right up close to go in there here. So I'm completely improvising now, and draw some stones, little circles. This is a skinny rigger here, by the way. But only in the very foreground. You don't want that in the background, because that will become boulders. So this is just for the foreground. There we go. That's just a rough old thing. Right, so we've got some purplish colour on there. Let's put some orange, some bright orange. It's only because I love orange so much. in into there. That's very nice. Nice, just some splashes of water, which will blend some of those dots together and make some of it run in some places and add to the general feeling of sort of texture that we're looking for here. That'll do nicely. Right, I'm going to dry that off, see what we got. I hope you can hear me right over the hairbrush, but some of these blobs take an age to dry, but it's best to be patient rather than rubbing them out. It's just a temptation, I know. When it's dried out, hopefully what you'll see is a rather attractive texture. Okay, so I'll give you now a couple of minutes to catch up. I'll just put that on pause. Putting it again. So all that luckily is not on the record, all that waffle. So here we are in the painting world. So there's only one thing left to do really, isn't there? And that's these boats. So we've been putting off the best till last. So what I'm going to suggest is grab yourself a couple of brushes. These are 2 flats. I use these flat brushes a lot, which is weird because when I first started teaching, I tried to teach, I tried to say, the thing I've been doing all my life was using only one brush and trying to get the fine stuff and the big stuff all out of one brush. And then what I've come to realize is it's actually much easier if you have the brush for the occasion. So what we're looking at right now is, let me just try and explain the task here. Most of this is, but all of this is one of 2 things. It's a shadow or a highlight. So you can see here, see this little highlight on this boat here, that's a bit of white paper. And this highlight here, that's a bit of white paper. Then we've got highlights on the edges and just where the sun is just catching. The rest of it is shadow. And now if you look very, very carefully at your source material, now this is worth pointing out. If I was to measure this pigment here in the back of that boat, it would be almost exactly the same as that, which is not at all dissimilar to that. So one of the great things about watercolors, I think, is the fact that you can pick up on these same, or these clues, and paint in very broad areas. So basically all we've got to do is we've got to get this pigment into here. Is that me crackling or is that someone else? Am I crackling? No?
You're okay, but Sue, could you mute, please? I keep pointing to you.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was worried. I know sometimes I crackle. and I didn't want to be crackly for you. Right, here we go. So I'm going to mix up a ton of that color. Now, this, you would think, wouldn't you? It's a shadow, it's going to be dark. Trust me on this, it's not as dark as it looks. In order to get a shadow, we haven't got to try too hard. I mean, just to be very, very clear, the shadow on the white of the boats is not that dark. When you get a dark, so underneath this boat, it's all covered in green gunge and stuff, and below the boat, and that is very dark. And it's also, the shadow has got darker here in the foreground. But actually, these shadows are really just this dark blue, this color of the sky, added to or taken away from the light that's already on this beach. It's as simple as that. And it's the greatest trick in the world to be able to use one pigment, as I hope we're going to do here, to get all of your shadow tones. Now, all we've got to do now is, so there's my puddle of purple. It's not really purple, it's more blue, actually. It's like an indigo. And I've got one big brush loaded with it. And I'm going to literally put in pigment everywhere that is not a highlight. So the only bit I've got to reserve is inside this boat, on the edge of this boat, and little bits around the edges. So there is a bit of, I've got to concentrate quite hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this source material very close to where I'm working, just so I can see what I'm doing. Interestingly, that edge there is highlight. So what I'm going to do, I'll do this. Why don't you just watch me, and then I'll stop, and then you can carry on. And I'm going to join the shadow in to the same moment in the watercolor. And then inside the boat, look, we get this. And I'm just leaving a little white ghostly line. No, I'm not. That's completely joined up. It's going to bring that to there. That's fine. So we're leaving that side of the boat free. So there you can see how incredible that already looks. Just looks like a 3D boat. So we're moving on to the next one. And the whole of the inside is, and all of the transom and all of the side, it's just around here. There's a little tiny ghostly highlight. But all of that can be completely, and there's a highlight down the edge of that transom as well. But all of this completely is covered over with shadow. So we're painting shadows here, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're doing. That goes along and doesn't quite meet that boat, so I've got that drawing in the wrong place, and we've got that shadow coming out there. I'll put that in at the same time. That's lovely. Now we're going to, so same pigment. I'm running out of pigment. I cannot believe how I never mix up enough pigment. Let's just mix up a load more. Oh, that's too red. Never mind. Luckily it's in small areas, so we're not relying on speed and continuousness here. Okay, right. I'm back in. Oh, that's a little bit blue. I've gone a bit blue now. You can't see this. You can't feel my pain. Here we are. So this boat here, there's a highlight down the edge and a highlight down the edges there and there. So that's all I'm going to do is just fill in here, here. Oops, I'm a little bit darker than the other boats. Let's just hope that in illusion terms that works out. That's the edge of that boat in the foreground, and then this boat, this edge. Now what I've done there is I've mistakenly not left a little white edge there. That's fine, we'll get away with it. And then finally this rear of this boat right in our face. Goes right up to there, then leave a ghostly white line on top, and then bring the pigment down into there, like this, into there, draw that lovely thing in. And now I've got to run this shadow this boat into that whole thing, and that the whole of the underneath of this boat becomes a great big dark mass. And also, just to add complication, this then goes green. So while this pigment is wet, I'm going to have to get another brush with some greenish material on, which luckily I've got some made up, and I'm just going to splatter that in to the area. So I want that in the wetting wet. I want those colours to blend together. That's why I'm doing that like that, and that will give us the sense of the bottom of a scuzzy old boat that's been actually, and while over there we can stick some on that boat. So I've also got some green gunk on the bottom. Right, so I'm going to let that lot dry. Hang on, I haven't quite finished. There's the interior of that boat there. The key to what I've just done though is consistency, not trying very hard. So see that, you can just about see inside that boat there. So I'm just putting a tiny bit of pigment in there just to bring that to life. Okay, so you carry on doing that. Do that at your own speed. I'll give it a few minutes. I'll just dry my paint off, and then I'll just wait. I'll just let you catch up for a couple of minutes. I've just found my pencil. Look at that. It was sitting there on my easel. Never mind. I managed without it today. Now, what's interesting, which is quite interesting, is that, you know, it's burnt into the pigment here, but I think that's quite attractive actually. So I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to just soften the edges where I put that pigment down. It will stay wet for a few minutes, and what that'll do is that'll just make that feel a bit more of a natural mark. Right, just dry that off and see where we are. While you're all finishing off, I will just waffle a bit. So I'm just looking at my what I've got here, and I'm curious. I think that should have been a little bit bluer, a bit less purple, but I think it'll be fine. I think that's, you know, we've got another coat to do, and maybe because some of these boats, you'll notice they're white on the outside, but they're painted blue on the inside. So we're going to add a little bit of blue pigment to the inside of the boat anyway. And so who knows, it could all come out fine. And also we're going to, we've got to add features, like for example, this, you know, this woodwork here, you know, will hint at this rope and the blue paneling down the side and things like that. So hence skinny brush at the ready. Interesting. We'll see. Let's see. I'm sure it's fun. This also isn't dark enough yet, right? As you can see, you know, that's really pretty dark there. So I will leave that until the end and see how it looks. If I've created, so this is what it's like being an artist. You just haven't got a clue really what's going on at all, and everything's a complete wing and a prayer. But underneath that, if this looks all right in the when the painting is complete, I'll leave it, but I might have to darken that down. The rule of thumb is try and leave the painting as soon as you can. You know, so what I'll be trying to do is to try and get away with the minimum amount of effort, basically. Okay, so are we good for me to carry on? Everybody good? Yeah. Okay, so let's do a couple of bits of fine detail. So I'm going to go back to the sea area first. One thing I will always say about doing, oops, that's me kicking my easel, a marine view, is you see these channel markers here and here and here, and cardinal marks. If you just dot a few of those on, it will definitely immediately look like a marine view. It's like magic. So I'm going to pick up on channel markers. We've got in here that I'm going to cheat. The marina, there's a marina here. It's about here, I think, maybe a bit further down. So I'm going to put a few masts in there just to make it look like a marina. That's just a complete cheat. But I think that's what we can do to make this look and feel like a place. So see this mark here is a long way over to the towards the edge of the painting. I'm going to bring this into view a little bit, and I'm going to try and be very careful with my relative heights. So what you'll notice is the tops of these posts are above the horizon. I don't know if you remember the way I bang on about this, that the horizon is your eye line. So what you can deduce, what you know, your brain knows already, is that I'm standing above or higher than these boats, but that these posts are taller than me, even though they're a long way away. And indeed, these trees are taller than me, even though they're a long way away, because the horizon is where your eye sits. So what you'll notice is the tops of these marks are all very similarly above the horizon, but the bottoms vary, and that's what gives you the distance. So we just need to be mindful of this. So when I put a mark in, I will start, so let's say around here. Where am I going to start? I'm going to start around, see, they're actually very close to the horizon. So I'm going to put my first mark in. I'm going to come into the frame a little bit and put a mark in about here. And that's got a triangle on it, which tells us it's a starboard mark. Now that pigment, incidentally, is way too dark. It's darker than our dark tones here, and I think that's going to upset our illusions. So I'm going to adjust my pigment strength by adding some water. But for this one, I can just dab a little bit of that out. But be very careful you don't squish and splosh if you ever do this. You want to keep the sense that you want to keep your brush marks. That's fine. Just very delicately get rid of that. Okay. So that's one. There's another one here. I'm going to be about roughly the same height. Put a mark in. Oh, much too thick. But this time it's going to be a bit shorter. And this is a cardinal mark pointing north. So I'll put that in for the boaties. And there's a port marker just there, which has got a hat on it, or tin can, depending on what you like to think. Oh, and there isn't one there, but let's put one in. Okay, all right. Now, just want to pick up on some of the feature of this kind of mud. So that you get these sort of channels, don't you? Which are sort of, these are, in fact, this is a flat mud, and there are channels within it. And what we're able to see is just where some of those channels stick their heads up. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to make a rough mark, and a very, what we don't want to do here is is overpaint this. We want to keep it nice and loose. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the top of some of those bits with just some water, because that's where it goes out of focus. So we should get the sense that that's a shadow over a kind of like a ravine kind of thing. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense there. I want the soft edge to be on top, not on the bottom, because the bottom is where the mud. Can you see what's happening there? I don't think you can see that. Okay, then we got this channel coming towards us down here. So again, put in a fair amount of pigment here and let that channel meander in like this. And now adjust that mark with some water. So that looks strong and heavy, but we're going to soon break that up with some water. This is going to hopefully give us an idea that this is an indentation in the mud. Hopefully, it's going to give us the right feeling. Oh, and there's one, I mean, we don't have to follow slavishly the exact content of our source material ever, but I'm going to put this one into this one that runs all the way along there. So I'm using this quite rapid, delicate mark making. I don't want this to be over made. That'll do me. Okay, that'll do me. I'm hoping that when that dries back, it'll be a bit less dark. It's quite in your face at the moment. Just back there, there's a few bits of detail which you can hardly see. I'm just going to put those in like this, just to reinforce the idea that this is a reed bed out in the distance. I'm going to put very, very delicate, very, very thin pigment indeed in this marina that isn't there. I'm going to put a few masts in. That's almost too heavy. Really, really thin, almost water. And keep it random, of course. It doesn't look too contrived. That'll do. What else can we do now? Right, feature on boats. So using the same dark pigment. This is all the same. All these dark marks are with the same dark pigment. That dried out. I just saw that wasn't dark enough. Okay. Right. Let's have a look at this. So we have got here a front, this is called a stringer, this lump of wood that goes down the front, and around underneath the gunnel is kind of an extra shadow. And then also we have got here this keel, which is a bit obvious, and that's going to extend into the shadow. So I'm going to pull that into the shadow there. Oops, that's way too strong. So sorry about this. You may need to catch up with this on the video later. I want to soften that out completely. There we go. Get rid of that. I might have ruined that shadow a bit. Probably have. I've got some blue pigment to put onto that because this is a blue boat. So that I'm going to overpaint those shadows. That's another time. Right, let's move on to the next boat. Oops, wrong end of the brush. This one here has got a wooden gunnel around there, which is darker, and comes all the way around and then onto the transom at the back. And again, this has a fair amount of deep shadow under there, which is coming all the way up to there we go. Now, what I'm doing here, I'm using a brush with just water on, and every now and again, I'll just come in there and just break up the mark that I've just made to blend it. And it's much easier to do that than to try and get it right first time. And then this is to match the other side. And of course, there's this very subtle shadow. Oh, actually, there's some kind of fender or something in the front there, which is giving us a little object to paint on the inside. This is just water. Coming on to this boat here, we haven't got a clearly defined edge on this boat yet, so I'm just going to put that in like that, and then my source material is so small and so fuzzy, I can't really see what's going on, which is really good. Actually, I mean that in a positive way, because I'm forced to make rough marks that aren't quite as defined as a photograph would be. So actually, that's really helpful. And now I've just done the drawing slightly wrong there. So what that means is I've got to compensate slightly. So we can't see as much as that panel on the back of that boat as we thought we could. That's good. Now, that's got a shadow underneath. That's good. That's good. That's good. There's just a little funny mark. Not really getting that. Okay, put that there. And there's a deeper shadow underneath that boat as well, interestingly, which has not quite come out in the right place. Now this boat here, this foreground boat, the things we've got to look at, we've got this rope around the edge. I might ignore that. This is kind of the one we're going to be looking at because it's the one in the foreground. So, sorry for talking to myself. I hope it's making sense. This is interesting. So there's a slightly bigger brush now, and I'm adding some more blue to it. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and put in this feature here. This is it's kind of like this blue. So this is a blue pigment, and what this is, I've got this T shape here, which is running across, and I'm over painting the blue shadow because, sorry, yeah, the purple shadow, because shadows are additive or subtractive, I suppose. You know, if you've got a shadow on something, it'll be the same color. So the material that it's causing the shadow on will be the same color in the light or out of the light, but with a shadow on top. I'm not sure if that made any sense at all. That's nice. And then this same pigment then can run around the side. And do you know what? I'm going to ignore that rope. I am removing that rope because that's too difficult. So I'm just going to run this blue stripe around the edge. Same pigment as I've just been using. And there it is. And yes, I've also got to paint this boat here is blue. So I'm going to get a very, very thin coat of blue paint just to paint that colour there. Just like that. And like that's also going to go onto that side because, of course, we're adding pigments, and there's an incredibly pale wash of blue on the inside as well. Oh, that paint was still wet, so that wasn't very clever. And this paint, this boat here, the one in the middle, is blue on the inside as well. So I'm going to pick up that, and I'm now going to completely overpaint everything, which is the inside of the boat. So it's going to let us know that that's a different colour on the inside. How are we doing? There's a bit of a turquoisey colour going on that far right boat. So I'll just hint at there, like that. Right, back to the skinny brush. I jumped out of skinny brush there for a second and back to detail work. This is probably the last couple of strokes. So I'm mixing up, going back to my purpley color, which I was using in the first place. I just need to accentuate a couple of little things. We're almost there though, as you can see. You know, the painting is practically finished. Well, actually, I say that I want to go in there and fix something in there, but I'm a bit worried that I'm going to ruin it because actually this paint here is quite nice. So I wonder if I just leave that. No, what I'll do, look, is I'm going to imagine what's there. We can't see it. I'm going to put in. I'm just going to put an extra shadow in this side of the should be the keel, like that. And now I've just put some dark pigment there, and I'm just going to fade that into, bring it up the side, and as predictably, that's now ruined my illusion. That'll do. Right, and you know the old saying, walk away as soon as you can. Let's walk away. I'm going to leave it there. Don't forget, painting is never finished until you've signed it. And I hope you're all signing yours as well. It's very, very important. Okay. Boats on the seashore, ladies and gentlemen. Right, you can switch your microphones on and talk to me now if you want. It's just, I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to turn off the recording. And now that takes